we didn't get it. Do we have any idea of when we might get it, if not today?
Mike's portfolio won over mine. So look, we have to wait for the next opinion that comes out. The Supreme Court
Tuesday
will tell us when they have opinions, but they will not tell us what opinions they are going to rule on. So that's another day of waiting. We have, though, heard from the administration within even just the past few weeks talking about the fact that they are hoping the Supreme Court upholds IEEPA. When you hear the president talk about IEEPA, he says there's a flexibility to it. It's a tool that's swift and powerful. There are other routes they can go with, but it wouldn't give the executive as much power when it comes to enacting tariffs. But for today, I guess we just have to wait for next week. This is something that a lot of people on Wall Street are watching, not just C-suite executives, whether or not they have to line up and decide if they're going to go for refunds, but also the bond market and what this could mean for Treasury yields.
Right. And I mean, okay, so Nike shares turned negative. I was going to say, what assets do we watch? Because basic materials, right? Consumer goods, Nike, what's the Urban Outfitters? Like
Costco.
Yes, these are.
I also don't understand why they would react today just because we didn't get a decision. I mean, does that speak to the way the Supreme Court's leaning? I'm assuming not. Maybe you can correct me, Anne-Marie, if the timeline makes a difference.
I don't think the timeline makes a difference. We need to know the decision, and then we can see what happens when it comes to the market. But a lot of individuals we talk to, a lot of analysts all morning on surveillance is saying it doesn't matter. And in the end, it really doesn't. This administration is going forward with tariffs, whether you like them or not. This is the instrument they've decided to enact trade policy with. And if they cannot use IEEPA, the president have other tools in his toolbox. Now, they have some issues with how high those tariffs could be enacted. There's issues regarding do they need to go into investigations and have probes regarding them?
How long it takes.
How long it takes, how long you can have them being used for. Some trade tools you can only use for 150 days. There's 338, there's Section 232s, which we're already using. There are other toolkits the president can use. So if you're a market participant, you look at this and you want to know it to understand what the direction of travel is, but what the end goal for this administration is, they are going to use tariffs, whether it's IEEPA or not.
I think investors, though, may be betting on a refund, right? If you're a doll maker, and now you're only able to sell one doll, whereas previously you were selling 30, right? Kids only need one doll, as the president has pointed out. That's no good for revenue.
And I guess you're bringing this up because Mattel is falling now 4.5%, but we don't have a decision. So maybe
this is part of to jump in here on the economic side, the White House can use tariffs again if it wants to, but that just delays the process and it keeps the uncertainty going in the economy, which leaves companies on the sidelines not knowing what to do, which means they don't hire people. And so we see a continuation of this low hire economy.
Well, the companies, and if they do line up and they want to go for this reimbursement, which, by the way, if you are a company that has been paying these tariffs, you don't automatically get them if the Supreme Court decides that IEEPA is illegal and the president doesn't have the jurisdiction to use that tool. You actually need to file suit with the Court of Trade. So you need to go to the International Court of Trade, file a suit to then line up for the rebates. But would you even need to go for a rebate if you know the administration is going to put on tariffs just in a different name?
Yeah. I was going to say Peter Scheer, his base case is that a ruling would make it difficult to even get the rebate. That whatever comes out of the ruling, it's not going to be as straightforward to like, okay, now you get a tariff rebate.
There's been an argument that somehow refunds would be incredibly complex and difficult, but to me it seems so straightforward. I mean, we're talking about at least the 1,000 companies that are in the suit, organizations that keep meticulous records of what they pay for things, right? And the same is true of Customs and Border Patrol. They keep records. It's all digital. Yeah, it's all documented.
There's something like 9,000 different companies, products that are under the tariff schedule. So you have to figure out which product under which tariff schedule and how much you paid for that product and whether it was discounted or not, and when you paid it. And so there's a lot to it. Plus, if, as Marie says, if the court decides that parts of it are illegal and parts of it are legal, then you've got to figure all that out.
By the way, that's something that companies have been complaining about during the tariffs, is the amount of friction that's been introduced, is the paperwork, the headache of trying to figure out where tariffs apply and when they don't. And I'm going to assume that, like, also adding a lawsuit on top of that and joining these 1,000 companies just adds to that complexity of the environment they're operating in.
Adds to that, plus the headlines we're going to get, likely, of new meetings going on between this administration and other countries if they need to renegotiate trade deals, or potentially moves in certain industries or certain asset class, because instead of going by a country basis when it comes to reciprocal tariffs, the president is going to then have to use tariffs that focus on specific industries. So that is why everyone says we're past peak tariff of Liberation Day of April, maybe, but 2026 doesn't mean it's going to be, blue skies ahead and crystal clear outlook on the trade policy of this administration if the Supreme Court strikes down IEEPA.
We thought with jobs and with the Supreme